let's really get into the nitty gritty. How do you find the right co-founder that's as motivated as you? Well, let me couch the reason this question comes up, because I see this on Reddit, I see this on the forums, and it's like I started with my co-founder, and then now we're like 6 months into it, maybe a year, maybe we raised some money, and now the shine's coming off. Well, they're not working as hard as me. I don't know how to do this. Like, I'm starting to question. And I always say, by the time you have to talk about it like that, writing's probably on the wall. So how do we avoid, like, let's get into and talk about how do we get that co-founder that's as motivated as us and not make those mistakes?
Well, it's a few things. Let me give you a story of where I had my first co-founder. It came in a different way, so I'll give you some backstory. So early in my career, when I was 19, I started my first company, which was an interactive ad agency, one of the first web design companies in 1994. I started by myself. A couple years into it, we ended up merging our agency with a traditional agency, one that had been around for a long time. They had brought on kind of a new partner to help lead the next generation of the agency. I was just turning 22 at the time. He was 26 at the time. So both of us very young at the time. He wound up being the hardest working co-founder I've ever had. And I want to tell you this story because I want to explain to you what that actually looked like. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about long hours and things like this.
Sure.
This isn't me like glorifying long hours. I'm just saying it's a pretty good proxy for how things went. We would have a race as to who could get into the office first. Okay. Forget what that means for a second. Right. And I'm talking like 5, 6 in the morning. Right. Like I'm talking bananas early. Okay. Hours before our employees would ever show up. Okay. Now we never said a word to each other about it. I never said one time ever that I'm going to get in before you.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting.
But I didn't have to. Okay. There were 2 cars in the first 2 parking spaces at our office, and they would face each other, and they were mine and Blaine's. Okay. And every day it would be about whose car was there first. I'll be honest, it was usually his.
Wow.
Okay. Now I'm the most motivated, ambitious person I know, and he outworked me. Okay. Now, I'm gonna caveat that by saying that was like 30 years ago, right? That was a long time ago when working yourself to death was fashionable. I would never recommend that in a million years, okay? To have this race to who's going to get in the parking lot first, and you probably don't have an office. I guess it's who's going to be on Slack first. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay.
My point is, although Ed, you can attest, I am on Slack at 4 a.m. So.
Oh, my word, you are.
So maybe I'm still doing it. Anyway, my point is this. I felt so good about driving to work in the morning because I knew the guy across from me that was going to park was going to be there before me, or if I was there before him, he was going to be there right after me. And he cared about whether he was there. Now, us parking early in the morning is a metaphor. It has nothing to do with what time we show up for work. It has to do with how committed we were to each other into this business. And so our work ethic collectively was perfect together. Right. And years later, like, when he and I grab lunch or something, even now, like, 30 years later, and we talk about it, we have huge smiles on our face, tremendous amount of respect between us. And I love that. That is so hard to find.
100%. I could not agree more. But Will, if I remember the story correctly, you had previous reps with this individual before you decide to partner together. And I think this goes back to what we've been talking about. I'm going to repeat it if someone's just watching this clip unto itself, is you find out ahead of time if the reps will justify the continued relationship. And the more reps you have, the more you can build that foundation so you can make that decision. So you're not in that situation where later on you're regretting that decision. So that's something that I think we need to talk about. But I'm going to say something very Machiavellian, and I'm curious your opinion. One of the ways that I keep my co-founders, and I have done so in the past, motivated and accountable, is that I reserve the right to fire them. Like I say, someone has to be the CEO, and we have an operating agreement. And if you don't hold up your end of the bargain, either you can go to the board and get the chairman to say, Ed's not pulling their weight and get me fired, or I can make the decision and get you fired, and you lose your shares. Like you'll walk away with maybe like 2%, 3%, even if you're vested 50%. I literally have that written into the operating agreement. And I know some people go, well, that's not cool, Ed. And at the same time, Will, I'm someone who is willing to give 50% of my company. They say, I want half your company. I'll say, I'll put you on a vesting schedule. I'll put you on a cliff. You can have half. You can have my job. You can replace me. Here's what we need to see. So I want to give out and promise as much equity, but how we get there, I'm pretty stringent upon what our agreements say. I'm curious what you think.
I'll be honest, Ed, I've never heard that, and I love it.
That's good.
No, I've never heard it, and I can't believe I've never heard it. What you said, Ed, what you said, I want to reserve the right to fire you. And what that's literally saying is, are you confident enough in your ability to always perform that I will never regret you coming here?
Exactly.
Now, it's not just that. When you say, I reserve the right to fire you, that creates a safety issue. Okay,
Sure.
I just want to be clear, right?
Yes, for sure.
It doesn't just say, are you motivated? It says, how comfortable are you being unsafe? And most humans are not comfortable being unsafe. Now, that said, okay, really interesting about that concept or that question is that for a lot of people, they don't have the confidence in their output to be able to stand behind that requirement, which to be fair, even a good person, I could see backing down on that, but a great person won't back down on that. I think that's really interesting. It's a fascinating filter.
And before everybody kind of flames me out there in social media land, which people tend to do for my strong opinions, I make sure the streak goes both ways. I've been in positions, Will, where someone's asked me to be a co-founder, and they've actually said, I want you to be the CEO. And I've said, I will put myself on a vesting schedule and a cliff, and we will hammer it out so that you, if after 1 year, you're, before the 1 year anniversary, you're like, no, this didn't work out, fire me. And I'll walk away with nothing. I will literally sign everything away because as to your point, Will, I never want to go in a situation as a co-founder because I know the emotional toll it takes. I know the commitment without fully 100% believing that I will do everything I possibly can to deliver. And I put my money where my mouth is.
Yep. Easy to say, hard to do.
Yes. And that is for all of you out there, just like your wives, I always say, or your spouses, if you've got a great partner who supports you, this crazy venture called startups, go and appreciate them right now. Same with really great co-founders. There are many times, Will, that I'm sitting there listening to other founders, and then I go, you know what? I just need to send Will a message and say, I appreciate you being my CEO. It literally happens all the time.
Honestly, it's in the gratitude out of my end is incredible. Fun fact is, about being a CEO, you almost never get a high five. It's a weird thing. Your job is to give everybody else high fives. It doesn't occur to anybody to give them back.
Loneliest position on the planet. Also, being a co-founder, it's not the same as other partners in small businesses. So the whole point is we empathize with all you founders out there. We know it's different.
Very much so.